What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Groomer podcast. I'm your host, Alex Martin, and today we talk to a different type of daily grooming expert. I'm here with John Hewitt. He is a renowned American entrepreneur who is best known for his success in the tax prep industry, having founded two of the largest tax preparation companies in North America. That's Jackson Hewitt and Liberty Tax. Now, you might be saying, this is a grooming podcast. What for professional groomers? What the heck are we doing talking to Mr. Hewitt? Well, let me tell you, in 2018, he left the world of tax to found Loyalty Brands, a group of franchise businesses, one of which is Zoomin Groomin. You may have heard of it, may have not. John's going to fill us in on it, but they have done very well. Over 80 plus vans nationwide. Hopefully, John doesn't fact check me on that one. With over 54 years of experience in business, John is here today to share more about his journey through business, Zoomin Groomin, and what it takes to win in your own business. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks, Alex. It's a great pleasure.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us, man. I hope that intro was up to par. You have so many things, so many stories in your life that it's hard to encapsulate it into just, a brief 20-second intro there. But I mean, give us like a, kind of a from your eyes background on your journey from tax to where you're at right now.
Yeah, if I can, then I'll take about 3 minutes and give you my whole 54 years.
Awesome.
I've been incredibly blessed. I started doing taxes when I was at the University of Buffalo at H&R Block, and I liked it so much that I left University of Buffalo, and 12 years later, I was running 250 H&R Block locations. And my dad was the CFO of a public company, and he liked the little Apple computer that he bought by mail better than the mainframe that was running his public company. And so he decided we should computerize taxes. So in 1981, we both quit our jobs and built the first tax software for an Apple computer. No one wanted it, way ahead of its time. You're not old enough to remember a world without computers, but there weren't even 100,000 desktops in the country. And got lucky and found a company in Virginia Beach called Mel Jackson Tax Service. The biggest good fortune was the weather here in Virginia Beach is a lot nicer than in Buffalo. And in August of 1982, I moved my family down here, and I've been here ever since. And so we merged the two companies, changed the name to Jackson Hewitt, sold it for, went public, sold it for $483 million. I had and today Jackson Hewitt is the 23rd largest retail franchise chain in the country with 6,000 locations. And I had a 3-year non-compete, but it didn't cover Canada. And having grown up in Buffalo, I had done Canadian tax returns, and I knew how to do. H&R Block was very successful in Canada, so we copied. We went to Canada and we started Liberty Tax. Within 3 years, we were a top 100 retail chain. So now I built one of the top 100 retail chains in US and in Canada. Came back to the United States in 2000. Now I had to compete against my own name and my own software and my own system at Jackson Hewitt. And yet, not only did we grow faster than Jackson Hewitt, we grew faster than them and H&R Block combined. And we grew to 4,000 locations in 12 years, top 10 fastest growing franchise ever. Public company, again, worth $500 million. So I built two $500 million companies in my career, public companies. One went on to become $1 billion company. So I'm one out of only 1,000 people in the United States that have ever founded a $1 billion company, and the only person that's founded two of the top 100 retail chains in the country. So sold out again, and as you mentioned, started Loyalty Brands. And Loyalty Brands is a combination of 8 different franchisors, and our fastest growing chain is Zoomin Groomin. And so I've never groomed a dog, but I'll tell you what I can what I can help the listeners that if you're a groomer, you need help in tax advice, in growing businesses. I've helped 5,200 franchisees start building businesses in addition to the ones that I built myself. And about 100 of them now are in grooming. So I teach people to build businesses. I help people with their bookkeeping and their tax, and that's where I can provide a big assistant, I think, because in all the tax returns I've done, there are people skilled at different. They're skilled at being a roofer, or being a dog groomer, or being a pizza shop owner, but very, very few are skilled at bookkeeping and tax. So that's where I can come in and growing a business. You know, when you go from 0 to $500 million companies, that's we have so much experience. Ready to answer any questions?
No, I mean, like I said, I appreciate you coming today. I remember growing up, you mentioned I grew up without computers. That I did, not to age myself, but I also remember growing up seeing Jackson Hewitt tax branches. I grew up in Missouri. I remember seeing one. We had a corner right next to our house, and it was almost like a sticker shock, John, when I realized that you guys were also the ones behind Zoomin Groomin to get you on today. So, you know, to go to 2018, I mean, I know you've got. I would like to dive in maybe to some of the wins and losses through your business career towards the end of the podcast, but to get up to speed in 2018 when you founded Loyalty Brands, obviously you said Zoomin Groomin is one of the fastest growing franchises in there. What was the thesis that you were looking for in franchises with Loyalty Brands? You know, why Zoomin Groomin? How did that come to be?
Well, all of our brands had to have integrity. They had to have a working model, and they had to be part of an industry that was growing. And we really acquired Zoomin Groomin 3 years ago, and I've learned so much about the pet industry. I just love the dynamics of the pet industry. And especially, and I think COVID gave it a shot in the arm, that 10% more Americans own pets now after COVID than before COVID, because they're all at home and wanted a companion. And so I've been in an industry, this is my 55th tax season, and I've been in an industry that grows by 1% a year. The pet industry, and that includes everything. That includes grooming and sitting and dog walking and poop picking up and food delivery and veterinary. I mean, it's growing by double digits. And so I love the industry because it's growing so rapidly, because pets are the only unconditional love you're ever going to get in your whole life on earth. And people, you know, they did a survey recently and they asked parents which they like better, their children or their pets. And 2/3 of them said their pets. And so I'm glad they didn't ask them whether they like their spouse better than their pet. I'd be afraid to hear that answer. But and there's no brand name. And you know, I've been competing in an industry where H&R Block is a household name. But in my industry, and we're in pets, we're in mobile grooming, and both in mobile grooming, there's no national name. And so we are on track by December of this year, we're going to be the number one largest mobile pet grooming in the United States. Now, I never had that opportunity at Jackson Hewitt. Together, both Jackson Hewitt and Liberty got to 10,000 offices to Block's 9,000, but neither one of them by themselves got to be bigger than Block. So I love the industry for many, many reasons. And it's, you know, I learned a long time ago that in 1776, Benjamin Franklin said there's two certainties in life, death and tax. And then 35 years ago, Dennis Waitley said, no, there's one more, and that's change. And that's for sure. But I'll tell you, in 2023, John Hewitt says pets is the fourth certainty in life.
I absolutely love that. You got death, taxes, change, and pets. I love that. And John, we won't ask you any of those questions about who do you like more, your spouse, your kids, or your pet. We'll keep those off the podcast agenda for today.
Thank you.
But no, I am curious. That is, I mean, so that's incredible. And I think a lot of your insights are echoed here within the community, that not only from a love and affection standpoint, pets are here to stay, but from a business perspective too. I mean, that's something that that's an industry that makes sense to compete in. Then, I'm curious. You said with Zoomin Groomin, there's no mobile pet brand name. When you got walk me through the process of looking at pet businesses when you were originally pre-acquisition of Zoomin Groomin. Were you specifically looking for a pet grooming business, a pet mobile business, or was it just we want to be in pet, or did it even just stumble upon your lap? I'm curious what your framework was going into that acquisition.
It was as in a number of huge breaks I've got in my life, it was stumbled into the industry. So we weren't specifically looking into pets. I mean, we're in other industries like staffing and home inspections and roofing and little medical school where we teach children about medicine, but we stumbled into it. So a huge opportunity. I've been so blessed in my life with opportunities like that.
I mean, that's incredible. And now being on the inside, I'm sure you've been able to realize, as you just said, how big of an opportunity this is. Have you questioned mobile versus brick and mortar now, knowing Zoomin Groomin? Have you built up a confidence and belief that mobile grooming is the way? Or again, is it just kind of the cards are dealt and it's like, you know what, if I was to do this again, maybe I'd look at brick and mortar, maybe I'd look at the retail fronts that you so well know. I'm curious to know your insight there because you are a retail guy at your core.
Right. We're growing Zoomin Groomin by leaps and bounds. We're adding about 10 new franchises a month. And when I peaked at Jackson Hewitt and Liberty, we were growing by 20 a month. So in probably 6 or 9 months, we'll be up to growing by 20 franchisees a month. But I'm so happy with the industry and so excited. We're looking at everything else in the industry to merge or test for our mobile grooming. I love grooming because it's the only industry I've been involved with that from the day you open, you're cash flow positive. You know, we opened our first van in August of 21, and the first day she was booked 3 weeks in advance. So with less than $500 of advertising. And so we teach people to advertise, we give them a program, and they hit the ground running. But we are going to test in the near future in 2024. We'll test dog walking, pet sitting, doggy daycare in a storefront. We'll test storefront grooming. We made an offer to buy a guy, Paul Allen, who had founded Wolfgang Bakery and Grooming, and he had about 140 storefronts. He went and sold it to someone else, but you're right on. I like the industry so much that we're going to test all of those to see if there's an opportunity to merge the two brands. And I just met a guy. I can't say where he's from because I don't want anyone to poach him. Love the guy. He had five storefronts that he founded one and acquired 4, and he also had 7 vans, and he sold his 7 vans for $1.8 million, and he's focused on storefronts. So he, in interviewing him and a couple times, he said that the customers are almost totally different. The person that brings their pet into a storefront isn't the person that's going to have you come to their home and groom the dog, and vice versa. So that's exciting. That if a third of the customers want mobile, and a third or 2/3 want storefronts, or a third want storefronts and 2/3 want mobile, I want to grab more of the industry. I love the industry and it's a feel-good industry. People love their pets so much, and they're so grateful for, as you have groomers that are listening, so they know better than I do what a feel-good industry this is.
100%, 100%. Um, you know, one key question I have while you were talking about that there is obviously it sounds like you guys are using your position now in the industry as almost like a hub and spoke, right? Having these mobile vans be the hub, and then you'll test almost the pet sitting, pet walking, brick and mortar. But all the customers may or may not be different. But right now, you know that you have something that works, that's cash flowing, that you guys are starting at a rate of 10 franchises per month. I'm curious from your retail experience in opening up retail franchises all over North America, what are the key differences between running a mobile business as you guys have, you've been able to see from the top now what that looks like, what the different logistics and operations look like and the pains and the pros from that versus running a retail front? What are kind of can you put them next to each other for us in the audience here to understand what are kind of the key pains and pros as a business owner of both?
Wow, they're more expensive than you might even think, right? That when you acquire a storefront, especially we're looking at when we've looked at partnering with a number of companies that have doggy daycare and storefront grooming or bakeries or food retail sales to pets. There's just so much overhead in doing that, and that you spend hundreds of thousands on build up, and you have to wait. And typically, you have to wait 9 to 18 months to lease a location, build it out, and then you're stuck. If there's a change in the demographics in the area around you, or there's a change in traffic patterns, the Kentucky Fried Chicken, the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken, he was 65 years old, and he had a great chicken franchise, and they built a highway around the chicken franchise. So instead of everyone driving through past his location, they went around his city. So he was out of business. So at 65, Colonel Sanders started peddling his chicken recipe, and then someone got him to franchise. But he did that because of change in traffic pattern. I mean, you can lose everything based on something. They tear up the road in front of your building for 6 months, and I mean, there's just so many things that can happen. But you don't face that with mobile. You're so much more flexible and so much more, and it's a stress relief. It provides stress relief for the owner that you don't have to put the dog in a car and go there. But there's a lot of hassles with real estate, especially if you're not the owner, and it's a lot more expensive if you buy the building. So it's a lot less expensive, and you can get up and running very, very quickly. In the companies I've talked to that deal in storefronts, they have to wait 9 to 18 months after they decide to open before they can open. Our franchisees can open in 30 days.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. It's quicker lift when you're starting a mobile business. It's lower cost. It's more flexible. I mean, you're right. One area, let's say, has some crazy construction or whatever. You can always drive somewhere else to get more business if you need to. Now, I'm curious, as you guys, you said you acquired Zoomin Groomin. I'm curious if you've had any say or input in how these vans are laid out so that you guys can scale at a rate of 10 per month. Because I would imagine, 10 per month, it doesn't seem that crazy at first, but the more you think about it, I mean, you are getting 10 vans from zero to out in operation at a rate of 10 per month, which is not only, getting the van all uplifted, but getting the person trained and finding that person. I would love to talk about how you guys are doing that at scale. But before we even get there, talk to me on the material side with the vans. Is there kind of like a common build out that you guys have settled on with these vans? What's the importance of the marketing? I mean, they're beautifully wrapped. Talk to me about how you think about that.
Yeah, the vans have to be upfitted. So we had a number of problems. When we started in 2021, we were in the middle of a chip shortage, and we couldn't get it. So we had a very difficult time just buying the vans. And then we had and we were starting out at bringing in one per month. And after 6 months, now we're bringing in two. And after another 6 months, now we're bringing in four. And so we could handle that. It was difficult. We had to have people, because of the chip shortage and vehicle shortage in this country, we had to have people call all over the dealers all over the country looking for the specific type of vehicle. We only have 3 or 4 different vehicles that are tall enough for our groomer to stand in and groom the dog, because they're doing it inside the vehicle. And so initially it was tough just to get vans. Well, now that's finally ended. And this year we ordered 100. 6 months ago, we ordered 100 for this year. And those are in the process of being sent in. So we don't have that issue. But now we have the issue where we had one upfitter, and he was only capable of doing about 3 or 4 a month, but he's expanding, and now we're looking for more upfitters. So yes, we're the upfitting problem is we need to solve those problems. Those are nice problems to have. You'd much rather have a problem of needing more capacity than having too much capacity. So those are our problems. And again, I built 2 companies from 0 to $500 million of value, from 0 to 500 employees. So that's my specialty, is building companies. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. Nothing is simple. You know, God didn't put anyone on earth to skate through easily.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's remarkable to think about, what that van outfitter must be thinking as you guys are calling him saying, hey, we need another 100 for this year, get them all ready to go. I'm curious, was he previously outfitting grooming vans, or did you guys come to just a van outfitter and say, hey, we're doing this van mobile grooming franchising, we'd like you to build them to this spec?
He had started a couple of years before we found him. So
Okay,
since then, we found a couple of mechanics / engineers that are learning to become outfitters. So
that makes sense.
we're
Bring it
creating
inside.
exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. You get up to a certain level, you start bringing the expensive costs and the expensive lead times in-house so that you can control that a little bit better. Now, what was interesting to me is you said the supply of operators was outpacing, or the demand of operators was outpacing the supply of vans. So talk to me about some of those early efforts that you guys did to go from 1 to 4 to 10, now on to 20 of qualified operators ready to roll and hit the streets.
I'm not sure what you mean by qualified operator. You mean vans or people?
People.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm an expert. Remember, I brought in my career for 25 years, I brought in 20 franchises a year. I brought in 5,200 franchisees. So, someone else must have done that. I don't know anyone that did that, but I'm an expert at finding those people that this opportunity is right for. And it's not about when you bring in a franchise, it's not about selling them anything. It's about finding the right person that wants to be self-employed, that wants to be in an industry, that it's the right time for them in terms of time in their life. They can afford to take a risk. They have financial responsibility to be able to do it, and they have the right motivation. And the beauty of this industry is, of all of our approximately 100 franchisees now, and that's growing every day, right? As we bring in every week, we're bringing in more people. Only less than 5 of them are groomers. Most of them are hiring groomers. So it's just finding people. But one thing is common in every franchisee that I've met is they all are pet owners. I think they all own dogs, 1 or more dogs. So they have a love for the industry.
Yeah, what you kind of have to do to be successful in the space, I think, or at least it makes it a lot easier, right? But that is really interesting to me that most of I think you said, yeah, majority of the franchise owners are non-groomers themselves. So they might own 2 or 3 locations, but they will hire groomers to fill that one van. Is that right? To
Yeah,
fill the van
typically,
in each location.
yeah, typically because the van is going 7 days a week, we'll need 2 or 3 groomers
Wow.
for
Okay.
each
Got it.
van.
Got it. And so that you kind of brushed over that, but that's a pretty powerful insight because I think, or at least most of the mobile groomers I've talked to are not running their vans 7 days a week because they are the only groomer. They are the business owner. It's kind of an owner operator type of situation where they are not only doing the scheduling at night, but they're showing up doing the groom and moving forward. You guys are doing it 7 days a week with 2 or 3 groomers in each van. That unlocks, 2-3x revenue potential just right there out of that one van.
That's exactly right. And in having done tax returns for millions of small businesses in my lifetime, the biggest disease I think of in American management is lack of delegation, the inability to delegate. And the people, that's the biggest mistake I've seen in poor performers is they have to do everything themselves. And so it's good for us that they aren't groomers because they don't make the mistake of going out in their van all day. They're involved with marketing and managing their business. They work on their business and not in their business. And that way they can have multiple vans.
No, you could not be more correct. And one thing that I think happens a lot in this industry is exactly that we wear both hats of, okay, if I'm the owner, I'm also going to be grooming. And so I might groom all day and then spend 5 hours a night trying to get more customers or trying to schedule my staff, etc. You're not fully, locked in. You're not fully performing at your highest caliber. And even, externally, you might only be working then 5-6 days a week, not the 7 days a week and doing 12 hours instead of 8 because you've got multiple people. That is super true. One question I have for you with that is how do you keep quality up to par when you start delegating? What is the process? You're a process guy. What is the framework and the mental model you use to make sure quality is maintained, that high quality is maintained as you begin delegating?
Well, first of all, in being a student of business for 55 years, I've had tons of experience. And what I've learned and what I preach is the number one most important. I mean, there's several elements of delegation, right? You find a person, you give them instructions, and it's easy to give instructions, right? Anyone can give instructions, but what happens is as human beings, we don't always give good instructions. And even if they're good instructions, the other person isn't always good enough to understand the instructions. And so what I've learned in my career is that the most important part of delegation is inspecting your expectations. You can expect there's going to be miscommunication. It's going to happen. If you've ever seen the telephone game where you go around and tell a story, I mean, it's going to happen. So what you have to do is inspect your expectation. One thing that our company does that is world-class and a differentiator is we call our customers and ask them how we did. Because it doesn't matter how the groomer thinks he did. It doesn't matter how I think the groomer did. It only matters how the pet owner, the customer, feels he did. And so in other companies, they tend to follow up in emails or postcards, or they give you a card to fill out or ask you to post a Google review. None of that is acceptable to us. We call our customers and ask for a reference as to ask how we did. And so we get a lot more accurate feedback. Now, we don't have the groomer call because they might have a grudge against the groomer, right?
Sure,
and the
sure.
groomer might lie. So a very personable person calls the customer and asks them how we did. And customers like being asked. In your life, how many businesses have called you in the last 12 months on the phone and asked how they did for you?
Yeah, none.
None.
I mean,
Right.
that would have my loyalty locked up forever.
Right. It's not just industry quality. It's totally all experience quality. So
Yeah.
I'm happy no one's copying it.
Well, we'll maybe bleep that part out. I'm just kidding. That's a great idea. Talk to me about that. One question I have on that is, again, you are a franchise scaling expert. I mean, you know process optimization forwards and backwards, building teams to meet certain demand. How do you organize a team like Zoomin Groomin? Do you have a dispatch team that's making those customer calls and handling customer inbound? Do you have a scheduling team? Do you have you obviously have the owners separate from the actual groomers. Talk to me about how you lay this stuff out for max efficiency and how you think about it.
Well, it's it's easier than you might think for this reason, that once you get up and running, most of your business is reoccurring, right? So initially, when you're starting, every customer is a new customer. But then the vast majority of customers are going to come back at whatever it is, every 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 12 weeks. So you're reoccurring. So it's a lot once you're up and going for a year, only the new customers are a little difficult to schedule. So we have incredibly special scheduling software that identify where the customer lives and knows when the van's going to be in that area, right? Because the biggest way to lose money is have 40 minutes between grooms in two different neighborhoods. So essentially, if you pretend there are only 4 grids in an area, there could be 6 or 8, but pretend there's 4. On this day, we're going to be in grid 1. On this day, we're going to be in grid 2, in grid 3, and grid 4. So we have software that does that. And of course, we teach our franchisees to do that. We even some of our franchisees aren't good at it for one reason or another. Might one or two have a language barrier. They have an accent. And so what we do is we encourage them to find someone who is good at it, but we will get on the phone with them and schedule the appointment. So we do role playing, but role playing isn't as good as actually physically taking the call with our new franchisee on the line. So we guide them through every step of the operations.
No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It's really great to hear from someone like you that something that makes your business run is that recurring customer, because I don't think enough time is spent. Even, you don't have to be a business of your scale to really focus on making sure that you have that recurring customer, because it makes business, whether it's small or large, that much easier. And you only have to win that customer once. Winning customers and new customers, as you said, it's a lot harder than keeping them. And so it's like, if you can keep them and you can convince them to stay, I mean, life becomes a lot easier for you. Business becomes a lot easier. I'm curious, when you guys are rebooking these people, you said 4, 6, 8 weeks, etc. Are you booking them dead on to the appointment, or is it tie into what you were saying about the areas, saying, hey, in 4 weeks from now, in the first part of the week, we're going to be in your neighborhood. We'll give you a call when we're close. How do you, I guess you lost me a little bit with the grids and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, the grid is for when they're a new customer and they come on board. Once they're up and reoccurring, then we're going to make a call to them. We ask them, how often would you like, or how often do you have your dog groomed? Because most of the dogs have been groomed before. We're taking customers from other businesses. And so we say, and then we call them in advance and schedule. Like, we don't typically take an appointment at the time of the grooming, because groomers aren't good at that. They're good at grooming. Not all of them are good at our groomers are incredibly good at pets. They're not all good at people. And so, heaven forbid that they ask for a referral. I don't know what I would be curious. What's your opinion? You are reaching out to groomers. What's your guess as to what % of groomers do a good job of asking for a referral?
It's got to be pretty low. Again, we're in a fortunate environment, as you mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, where there is so much demand, where any desire to do an extra thing like that, especially when it has to do with customer relationships, kind of flies by your ear there.
From our testing and experience, it's less than 1 in 5 groomers is good at asking for a referral. And
Oh my gosh.
there was an interesting book I read. I read it because it's close to my tax business. It's called Guerrilla Marketing for Accountants. And this accounting CPA firm wrote the book, and they they checked with all their customers and said how many of you were happy, and 95% were happy. And they said, well, how many of you referred someone? And less than 40% of the people had referred anyone. They said, well, why didn't you refer anyone? And no one asked us. We didn't know you wanted more business. And so it's you talk about referrals being inexpensive and so easy to manage. What about referrals? How inexpensive and cheap is that? Do you know anyone else that might be interested? And how many dog owners know another dog owner that might like a great grooming company?
So John, walk me through let's do kind of a role-playing scenario with that.
Sure.
Would you recommend that this happens when someone is signing out their pet, picking up their pet, and you look at them and say, hey, do you know any other pet owners? Is it through an email, a call? How would you recommend someone actually implement this?
If that was going to happen, if that was a good possibility, I would. But we solved that. We saw that, Alex, by when we make that call and we ask the customer, were you happy? That very personable person asks for the referral. So we're ensured that everyone gets asked well for a referral. Even if I trained all my groomers, that's just not in their skill set.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not. I'm shy myself. Probably wouldn't be good asking for a referral myself. Most people are operators and doers and not good at marketing. They're and the person that calls is a very personable, outgoing person that loves to chat up people and well-liked, and they ask for that referral. And so we get more referrals, we get more retention because we call our customers.
Calling your customers seems to be the key to everything. Even, I'm not sure how much you guys are fluctuating price, but even I've heard salon owners use those customer calls as a way to judge, hey, if we raise prices in the new year, we're thinking about going to X, Y, and Z. What do you guys think about that? You've got a direct line to your customers, and enough people do not use that.
Yeah, I don't. We tend not to let a customer think about that or ask them those questions. But here's a question that I'll give you. If what percentage of your customers have to complain about your price for it to be a fair price? Do you agree? Do you agree first, Alex, that if everyone loved your price, doesn't it make sense that your price is too low?
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
So that's my philosophy, is that some people have to complain about the price. Some people have to not come into you because the price is too high or it's too low.
I love that.
And so what percent in your mind, think about it, this is probably the first time you thought about it, what percentage of people have to say, no, it's too high, I'm not coming back again, in order for you to understand that, yeah, my price is fair?
30%.
30? I don't know what the number is. I would have said 10.
Okay. So I guess I was thinking maybe 30 is a little bit too high, maybe 20 or so, because you're right. You want a little bit on the top side of people saying, no, that price is too high for me. And a little bit of buffer on the bottom side saying, no, like, okay, yeah, I love this price, right? And everyone else,
right?
Yeah. Everyone else kind of sitting in the middle where
Right.
They think in their head, whether they tell you or not, that it's fair.
Exactly.
Wow. That's a good insight. And that's a good pricing practice as we think through, is everyone happy with these prices? If that's the case, I should probably raise them a little bit.
Yeah. What percentage of your listeners do you think know that their price is right on target?
So little. We talk about this on the podcast a lot, that people are not charging enough in the industry, especially from the independent pet store owner perspective. A lot of our business owner listeners own somewhere in the range of 1 to 3 stores. And I encapsulate stores with mobiles or salon fronts. And I would say upwards of 75% of our audience probably isn't charging enough.
Exactly. When we go to look at, we've converted operators, mom and pops, into our franchise, or we've looked and we bought some, and we're looking at buying storefronts. And I would say that 90% of them are undercharging what would be considered a fair price to the customer. It's not my opinion. Doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter if I think the price is fair. It only matters if the customer thinks it's fair. And 90% of them are undercharging what they should be charging.
Why do you think that is?
A lack of fear of people complaining about price, a lack of confidence, people don't understand that they're in an environment where they're in an industry where they're competitive. And most people that I would guess your listeners, if I said to them, who offers the best service in your market? They would say me. Well, I would say, who offers the highest price in your market? And they would say, someone else. Well, I'd say, shouldn't the best price get the best, or whoever's getting the best service, shouldn't they be able to charge the best price? People are willing to pay more for service. And others don't understand that. They don't value what they bring to the table. It's a matter of self-confidence and that simply self-confidence.
I mean, John, you're speaking too much truth right now. Listen, before we wrap up, your book out there called I Compete, for anyone that wants to learn a little bit more about John and read about some of his wins and even mistakes in your life. I haven't finished the full thing yet, but I was able to peruse it, the weeks leading up to this call. I want to leave our audience with some of those mistakes that you shared in that book, as kind of, a humanizing effort with, you're here, you've been speaking so much truth about how to successfully run your business. And a lot of us might be in the shoes of, okay, well, it's easy for John to say, I mean, he's done this for so many years. He's sold, 2 companies, etc. But in your book, you share some of those more humbling mistakes where, hey, I'm not perfect. I don't know what I'm doing. I just kind of keep putting one foot in front of the next to keep going. So I wanted to share some of those on the podcast. Do you mind leaving us with 1 or 2 stories from mistakes that you've made in your career that have really shaped who you are or how you think about things?
Yeah, my biggest mistakes are mostly so I'm going to have to go to some of my lesser mistakes, because my biggest mistakes are in building huge companies, and going from hundreds of locations to thousands. So I have to leave you with smaller mistakes that are customer related, for example. And what I learned is that, or here's an example, that people are afraid of their customers, and they treat 98% of customers poorly because 2% are going to take advantage of them. And so I learned a valuable lesson in 1975 when I was a district manager in Corning, New York. I decided that always honor a money back guarantee, full money back guarantee. And what people lose sight of is, pretend a groom was $100, right? And you think you're going to lose $100. Well, how many times is that person going to come back to you? I mean, they could come back for 10 years, 5 times a year. They come back for $5,000. You won't give them $100 refund because the dog got nicked or they said something that wasn't true. So I learned this valuable lesson, and I have hundreds of examples like this. So this was my first memory that H&R Block, the average fee back in 1975 or 6 was about $12. And these 2 sisters came in, they were elderly, 55, 60 years old, and they had the same tax return, except one had a little interest from a bank and the other just had a W-2. Now, when you have a tax return, you have to fill out, back then, you have to fill out an extra schedule for the interest, and it was like $2. So $2.50. So one of the sisters was $15 and the other was $17.50. So they had two different tax preparers. So the sister that paid $17.50 called up and said, we had exactly the same stuff, and I was charged $17.50, and my sister's only charged $15. So the manager tried to explain to her, well, see that extra, that Schedule B, and she said it's like 10 letters you had to put on this. I mean, it's little teeny, and you're charging me $2.50 for this. And so I told so it finally came to me as the manager of 20 offices, and I said, give her money back. And the office manager was crazed. He says, no, the other sister is going to come in and complain and want her money back. And not only did the other sister not come in and complain, but they came back for decades, those two sisters. And we never had that problem again. She understood it was going to be $2 or $3 more. But I've learned that if you give someone that people will take advantage of you, and you build that into your price. Let's pretend that today that you are going to do 1,000 tax returns at $300 a piece. You know positively, 20 people are going to take advantage of you, right? That's 300,000 of revenue. You know that 20 people they're going to demand their money back. They're going to be rude. And so you just build that into your price. And it doesn't, when you do a tax return, it doesn't cost you $300. It costs you about $50. So if it costs you $50 to do these 20 returns, it costs $1,000, and you're doing 1,000 customers. So if you raise everyone's fee by $1 from 300 to 301, it's sort of like in a grocery store, when you get a bushel, when they buy tomatoes or apples, they buy apples, right? They buy a ton of apples, and they know they're going to have rotten apples, right? They're not all going to sell. So they build it in the price, right? So if 10% of the apples spoil on average, they have to raise their fee to cover that spoilage. So it's spoilage. And so you build that into your service. Isn't your service far better because you don't have those complaining people? You don't feel bad. Your franchisee or your taxpayers don't feel bad. Your groomers don't feel bad. If once a month someone's let's say you do 5 grooms a day, even if it's only 5 days a week, 4 weeks, that's 100 grooms. Let's say one person's going to complain, and you're going to have to give your money back. You raise your fee $1 to all the other, or if 2 people are going to complain, you raise your fee $2, and then God bless, take your money. And you know what? I don't want a customer like you anyway.
No, absolutely. I mean, 2 takeaways from that. A, raise your prices just a little bit, even across the board, to cover some of these folks that are going to take advantage of you, because not everyone out there is a great person, and some people are looking for shortcuts, etc. That's just a universal truth. We'll call that our universal truth 5. But also, customer guarantees, like giving someone that level of customer service will win them for a lifetime. And so it's a short-sighted mistake to not give someone their money back if they're not happy, because you're going to lose that customer forever then.
And they're going to tell how many customers.
You're right. And you're going to lose out.
They're going to lose them. You're going to lose any referral you would have got for them. If you gave someone's money back, wouldn't someone go tell someone that, boy, this company's so great, they even gave me my money back? So you're going to get more referrals. And if you didn't give the money back, they're going to go tell their friends, whatever you do, don't go
to them.
Don't go to that company.
Absolutely. I mean, and as you talked about before, I mean, that referral is worth so much more than that one price of a groom, that one service cost. It's worth so much more than that.
And your profit's like 40-50%. All they have to do is come back one more time. And they pay for the money you lost.
Absolutely. I heard a quote. I cannot remember who said this, but they They said the best way to find your super customers is to make your angry customers happy. It's not to turn your like already happy customers into super customers. It's to find those angry customers and do stuff like that, little acts of service. That's your easiest route to find your super customers. You can turn them loyal in a second.
Alex, there's been all kinds of studies. If you look at a retention of someone who never had in any service business, someone who never had a problem versus had a problem and got it solved, the retention rate is 10% better of someone who had a problem and had it solved than someone that never had a problem. So that's a treasure there. And that's another thing you get, Alex, when you call customers, because some customers aren't going to complain. They'll just never come back. But if you call them, there's a good chance they'll tell you the truth.
I love that. I love that. My two big things ringing in my head as we leave this podcast are to call your customers and to raise your prices. John, you are amazing, man. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the podcast. You have built some incredible businesses, and then what you're doing with Zoomin Groomin right now is an inspiration for us all. I'd recommend everyone to read John's book, I Compete. As I said, I'm working through it right now, and it's been an amazing read. John, if people want to learn more about you, where do you recommend they look?
Well, I'm on Wikipedia. I'm on but I will send anyone a free book that from this podcast if they send me their address. It's just John, John at loyaltybrands.com. I'll send you a free book.
Amazing offer, man. John, it's been a pleasure. Can't wait to have you back. That's the pod.
Thank you. Look forward to it. Thanks, Al.